Florence Tichaona is an accomplished protocol and consular affairs professional with over 15 years of experience supporting high-level diplomacy across diverse international settings. She served as First Secretary, Protocol at the Malawi High Commission in Nairobi, and her protocol portfolio covers Kenya, Uganda, Israel, Eritrea, Somalia, and Central African Republic, demanding discretion, cultural intelligence, and calm decision-making under pressure. Her approach is grounded in lived experience and aligns with the Protocol Practice Index, advocating standards that reflect real-world diplomatic practice and resilience leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, discussing crisis protocol and resilience index response capabilities, Ms. Florence Tichaona, please come up stage. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, before I start, I would like to say thank you to the International Center for Protocol and Diplomacy for this honor, and especially for convening this important conversation on the future of global protocol and diplomacy. You see, when many people hear the word diplomacy or protocol, they immediately think of rules, seating arrangements, titles, procedures, and even formalities. But from my lived experience, protocol succeeds or fails on something far more. Allow me to begin with a story from my home country. You know, in the dry season, animals will always gather peacefully at the watering hole. It can be a riverbank. You will find zebras drinking, antelopes drinking, and even elephants standing calmly. Everything appears stable, but experienced animals always remain alert. Because you know the real danger is not when the lions roars, it is when the birds suddenly go quiet. That silence means something has shifted. And now survival depends on awareness, preparation, and also response. Protocol works in the same way. Diplomatic crises rarely begin with dramatic announcements. No, they begin with small shifts. It can be a delayed arrival, a misunderstood title, maybe a seating adjustment, or a cultural signal missed. And suddenly, the success of an engagement depends not on the written procedure, but on the system's resilience. Now, today I will share how crisis protocol, resilience, and response capability connect directly to what we now call the index era of protocol practice. When we talk about the index era, we are really talking about a fundamental shift in how we define protocol professionalism. Traditionally, protocol was assessed by structure. We normally focused on whether the ceremony was correct, whether the order was followed, whether procedures were completed exactly as planned. And if all of that checked out, we considered protocol as successful. But today's diplomatic environment has changed tremendously. Global engagements are faster, more fluid, and far less predictable. Structure alone is no longer enough. What matters now are outcomes. Right now, we need to start asking ourselves different questions. We need to ask ourselves, did protocol hold when conditions changed? Did it protect relationships in moments of uncertainty? Did it enable cooperation under pressure? This is what now defines the index era. Protocol moves from being purely procedural to something measurable, adaptive, and strategic. And it's within this shift that resilience becomes one of its most critical indicators. And now, before I share what this looks like in practice, let me briefly situate myself in this work. My name is Florence Tichaona Mwangi, and I come from the warm heart of Africa. I'll leave you to guess which part that is. But it is a place where the sun is generous, where the lakes feels more like an ocean, where people greet you more before they even ask you what you do, and where warmth is not only about climate, it is cultural. If you're still guessing, good enough. That curiosity will serve you well in this index era. Now, for context, I served in Kenya as First Secretary Protocol, working closely with the High Commissioner on high-level diplomatic engagement. My protocol responsibility covered Uganda, Israel, Eritrea, Somalia, and the Central African Republic. In supporting my diplomatic engagements across diverse national and institutional systems, I have seen wide political and I would say cultural and also procedural variation. But one reality cuts across all of them. Every system eventually encounters unexpected change. When that happens, written procedure alone does not carry the moment. What matters is real-time response capability, the ability to adapt instantly while safeguarding dignity, relationships, and also outcomes. And this is exactly where the next indicator becomes critical. Let's now dive into something different. Let's consider something that often appears straightforward in protocol, credential presentations. On paper, they are very clear. There is correct sequence, correct language, and correct posture. When those elements are in place, the engagement is technically sound. But in practice, however, credential presentations carry far greater weight. They are moments of national dignity and bilateral respect, and their impact extends well beyond procedural accuracy. I learned this early in my career during a credential presentation in Uganda when I accompanied my High Commissioner to present credentials to President Yoweri Museveni. That time, from a technical standpoint, everything was correct. The sequence was followed precisely, the language used was accurate, and posture and movement aligned with established protocol. And the ceremony proceeded without interruption. However, there was one subtle cultural expectation that had not been fully accounted for: the importance of allowing the host authority to fully set the pace and tone of the interaction before any movement or exchange. Now, while the procedure itself was accurate, the moment required a slightly longer pause and acknowledgement consistent with how respect is signaled in many official settings. No rule was broken and nothing failed, but the atmosphere shifted slightly, a change perceptible primarily to protocol professionals, yet one that quietly influences perception and tone. That experience clarified something essential. Protocol success is not defined only by correctness. Correctness is the baseline. What ultimately defines or determines effectiveness is its contextual appropriateness, the ability to align procedure with culture and expectation and the meaning in real time. This distinction between technical accuracy and contextual performance is exactly the kind of gap that the index era is seeking to identify and also measure. Let us now talk about a critical dimension of response capability: relationships. Across multiple countries, I observed that when plans changed unexpectedly, hierarchy rarely determined the outcome. What consistently made a difference was relationships. When trust existed, adjustments were accepted quickly. Where communication channels were established early, solutions emerged faster. Where mutual respect was visible, even sensitive changes were managed smoothly. And I saw this firsthand during my posting in Kenya. You see, earlier on, I made a deliberate effort to invest in relationships before I ever needed them. I deliberately visited the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and this was not for formal engagement. It was just simply to understand the officers and also the people I would be working with. I would just walk in the office, introduce myself, exchange greetings, and I would just make small connections. At that time, there was no immediate payoff. But as my work progressed, these connections became operationally significant. When challenges arose, I often knew someone or someone who knows someone who could help resolve an issue quickly. My work flowed faster, not because of authority, but because relationships and trust were already in place. That experience made a key point clear. Relationships are not soft elements of protocol. You need to get that one. Relationships are not soft elements of protocol. They are operational assets. They directly shape how effectively a team responds when conditions change. And in the index era, if we are serious about measuring real response capability, these operational assets like trust, communication readiness, and relational networks must be understood and also assessed. Which brings us to the next critical dimension: how resilience intersects with these relationships to ensure outcomes under pressure. As I build on what we just discussed about relationships, cross-cultural differences, which also shape how effectively we respond when things change. In some contexts, direct communication signals efficiency. In others, indirect communication signals respect. In some cultures, quick decisions demonstrate leadership. And in others, consultation conveys legitimacy. Now, if you misread these signals, it can create friction during sensitive moments. It can slow response, or also it can undermine trust. That is why cultural intelligence is more than an interpersonal skill. It is a resilience mechanism. It allows protocol systems to adapt, absorb stress, and also maintain effectiveness under pressure. In the index era, globally relevant protocol cannot be culturally neutral. Never. It must always be informed, sensitive, and adaptable to the realities of the people and systems involved, just as the relationships we build in advance enable faster and smoother responses. Now allow me to bring this framework to life with a real example. Let's look at the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. I'm going to illustrate this in the 5-point response model, which I came up with. You see, what is often forgotten is that this agreement, the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, did not begin in a conference room. It began quietly, through back channels, at a time when the United States and Iran had no formal diplomatic relations. And there was almost no trust. The first task was relationship mapping, identifying who actually influenced decisions in Tehran and Washington beyond formal titles. Then came cultural briefing. Negotiators had to understand political pride, public perception, and how language or sequencing could signal respect or humiliation. Response channels mattered most. Before anything went public, direct human contact was established through quiet meetings in Oman, which reduced misinterpretation, and also it allowed intentions to be tested safely. Authority awareness was very critical. Nothing would hold without approval from the highest levels. Barack Obama in Washington and Hassan Rouhani backed by Iran's supreme leadership. You know how it was that time. And finally, quiet contingency planning. Sanctions relief was phased, inspectors were built in, and fallback options were prepared, and nothing was left to assumption. Whether one supported the deal or not, the lesson was clear. This was not theoretical readiness. It was deliberate, structured response capability in action. Exactly what the 5-point response model is designed to capture in the index era. Let's now bring this back to the index era. The Protocol Practice Index marks an important evolution in our profession. It shows that protocol excellence is no longer about form. It is defined by the consistency under pressure, cross-cultural effectiveness, and institutional responsiveness, and also the sustainability of relationships, which is very important. Now, by indexing these elements, we gain greater accountability, clearer professional standards, and stronger diplomatic outcomes. And this is not measurement for its own sake. It is measurement that actively strengthens international cooperation. Let me now close with a simple observation from practice. During a summit in Kenya with multiple heads of state, the Malawian president I was facilitating experienced a flight delay. In this, it was pressure moment. It disrupted the program because according to protocol, 2 presidents cannot be in the VIP lounge at the same time. The flags, the decor, and the apron must all reflect the arriving head of state. This meant we had to quickly remove the Malawian colors, redeploy the lounge and hotel arrangements to reflect the incoming president, ensuring flags and representation were correct. Timelines were tight. Hotels had to be notified and every detail adjusted. And no manual could fully prepare you for that. What ensured success in this instant was prior trust, cultural awareness, and the confidence to adapt without creating embarrassment for anyone. Once handled, the visit proceeded smoothly, and most observers never realized anything had changed. That, to me, is the essence of resilient protocol. Not preventing every change, you cannot, but you just have to ensure that when change comes, dignity and cooperation remain intact. Now the index era challenges us to move beyond asking, was protocol followed? Now we need to start asking ourselves, did protocol sustain diplomacy when conditions shifted? When we can measure that, we are not only strengthening protocol practice, we are strengthening the foundations of international engagement itself. Now, I don't know if you're still guessing the country that I come from. I come from Malawi. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that in-depth presentation there. There was so much to take from it, and it's so detailed that, there's so many areas I want to ask, but there's one thing that you mentioned that I thought I'll quickly ask about, because, the presentation from beginning to end was very detailed. My question briefly is, in our current geopolitical, unstable and turbulent world, right? How do we adopt protocol procedure to suit, imbalances or shifts that occur in practice?
We need to, like I mentioned in my address, we need to take relationships very serious. The moment you establish relationships in real time, when you can have a human contact, whenever there's a shift or whenever there are changes, you are able to quickly adjust and make calls where needed, and also make changes so that the shift is not noticeable. So especially nowadays when even communication is very fluid, with the internet around and all that. We just need to be on our toes and establish relationships in good time.
Okay. So we establish relationships all over, not just in just international relations and diplomacy alone, but relationships across board. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Excellent.
and we don't have to depend on the procedures in the book.
Okay.
We
Excellent.
have to go outside the book.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that in-depth presentation there. And I really, really appreciate it was so insightful. I kept on making lots of notes. So thank you so much for that. And hope to see you in our other programs as well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.